Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Inuit, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. I'd like to introduce the members of the panel today, the secretary to the board and the assessor. Our panel members today are Adela Del Oro, who is joining us by Zoom, Robert Kraus to my left, and myself, my name is Gisela Rempel. Our assessment department personnel is Jennifer Nichols, and our administrative personnel are Tristan Brading to my immediate right and Frank Picotto. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 9 to 15 on our docket today. Ms. Picotto, please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony.
Sure. Madam Assessor, please state your full name.
Jennifer Nichols.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Carson Horsburgh.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will proceed with item 9 on the docket, which is 279 Niagara Street. Madam Assessor, if you'd like to make your presentation, please.
Sorry, Madam Chair, there's I think we left item 9, but it's actually not right.
Item.
It's been
We came to an
withdrawn.
agreement on that value.
Yes, sorry, we have an old docket. So we will move to item 10. Maybe we will get to enjoy some of this afternoon. Okay, so item 10 is 508 Waterloo Street. Madam Assessor, I'll turn it over to you to make your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So the roll number for this property is 120505200000. Street address is 508 Waterloo Street. This property is located in North River Heights. It is a two-story home built in 1948. No effective age on this property. Living area of 1,261 square feet, a full basement, which is not finished, one full bathroom, no air conditioning, and a single detached garage. The lot size for the subject property is 4,821 square feet, and the current 2025 assessed value for the property is $406,000. Comparable one is 433 Queenston Street, also located in North River Heights, also a two-story property built in 1946. It's very close in age to the subject property. Living area of 1,258 square feet. Comparable number one has a full basement, which is also not finished. And one full bathroom, no air conditioning, and a multiple detached garage. Comparable number one has a lot size of 4,309 square feet, and it does have a back lane land influence. The time adjusted sale price for 433 Queenston Street was $380,200. Comparable number two, 390 Cordova Street, also in North River Heights, also a two-story, built in 1949, so very close in age to the subject property. Living area of 1,420 square feet. Comparable number two has a full basement, which is finished, or at least partially finished. One full bathroom, one half bathroom with a shower, air conditioning, and a single detached garage. This property also has a sunroom, and lot size is 4,190 square feet. The time adjusted sale price for comparable number two is $457,200. Comparable number three, 361 Queenston Street, also located in North River Heights, also a two-story, built in 1931, so it is a little bit older than the subject property. Living area of 1,345 square feet, a little bit larger than the subject. This property has a full basement, which is also finished. One full bathroom, one half bathroom with a shower, air conditioning, and a single detached garage. Lot size is 4,307 square feet. And the time adjusted sale price of comparable number three was $416,600. And finally, comparable number four, 213 Niagara Street, again located in North River Heights. This is a two-story property built in 1927, older than the subject property. Living area of 1,258 square feet. Comparable number four has a full basement, which is not finished. One full bathroom, one half bathroom, no air conditioning, and a single detached garage. The lot size of comparable number four is 4,320 square feet, and this property sold with a time adjusted sale price of $310,000. So looking at the comparables that I brought today, all are in the same neighborhood as the subject property, all are two stories. There is some variation in the sale prices from $310,000 up to $457,200. I do think that the subject assessed value falls in line with the comparables that I was able to find. So I do think that the value is reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, do you have any questions of the assessor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do. Ms. Nichols, looking at your comparable sales, are you aware if any of those sales had been renovated? The properties have been renovated?
Yes, I made some notes. Comparable number one, I wrote mostly original, possibly some older renovations done. Comparable number two has had some mechanical updates, and possibly the kitchen counters replaced. Comparable number three is original. Comparable number four is original, and MLS had a note that it requires that TLC is required.
Okay. Thank you. And just one other question regarding comparable number one, the back lane influence. Can you expand on that at all? As my understanding is that most properties in River Heights have a back lane.
I couldn't, are you wondering why that one has back lane and the others don't?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I could say exactly without kind of looking in more detail in our system. It's possible that the three that are not showing back lane do have a back lane and we're just not showing it, but I couldn't say for sure without kind of looking in more detail in our system.
Another question. Comparables 1, 3, and 4 all have time adjusted sale prices that are lower than the assessed value of the subject property. So are you basing the 321.97 assessed value per square foot for the subject property on just comparable number 2? Because it seems that the other comparables all sold for significantly less than the assessed value of the subject property.
So the comparable properties that I brought today, because I wasn't able to do an inspection on this property and was also not provided any photos of the interior of this property, I don't have a lot of information regarding the renovations that have been done here. So the comparables that I chose were all not really, these are not properties that have been hugely renovated and updated and modernized. These are pretty original properties, even if a few things have been done here and there. And I do think that looking at the range in the sale prices, even though the subject is not at the bottom of the range, considering the year built of the subject, and considering the size of it, I do think that the value is reasonable. It's not at the bottom, but it's also not at the top.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to confirm that only one of the comparables supports the assessed value. The rest would all support a lower assessed value or a lower market value.
Well, I think if we take into account the size and the age of some of the comparables, like for example, comparable number 4 was built in 1927. That's quite a bit older than the subject property. So it makes sense to me, as well as, the fact that that property was listed as requiring TLC on MLS. It makes sense to me that that property would have sold for, quite a bit less than some of the others.
So you would agree that 3 of the 4 comparables would support a lower market value as compared to the assessed value?
No, I don't think it supports a lower market value. I'm saying I think it makes sense for the values to be lower for properties that are older or smaller or have, known issues compared to the subject property.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Del Oro, do you have any questions of the assessor?
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor?
No, I'm good, thank you.
I just have one question, and that is with respect to comp 4. I noticed that the time adjusted sale price is lower than the sale price, and it's the only one of the comparables where that has occurred. Can you tell me why that is?
Yeah, so the market in Winnipeg didn't really follow a straight line over kind of I guess if you think about, say from January 2021 or even, in starting in 2020 and up to April 1st, 2023, it wasn't like a straight line of increasing property values. So what we saw was that up to kind of a point, mostly in 2022, but for some areas, it actually started in 2021, values were going up and then values came down up to April 1st of 2023. So even though overall values increased from, say last reassessment to this reassessment, there was a period of time where properties had kind of hit their peak value and then they started to come down a little bit to the reference date.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
My questions have been asked and answered, so I think we can move on to the next property, which is number 11277 Waterloo Street.
Sorry, I usually would make.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Would you like to make a summary?
No, he hasn't presented it.
Oh, of course, we need the pictures. Sorry, Mr. Applicant, could you please make your presentation?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry.
So beginning on page 1 of my disclosure, again, today we're discussing file number 24840-508 Waterloo Street with an assessed value of $406,000. If we move on to page 3 of the disclosure, again, we have a 1,261 square foot single family dwelling built in 1948. It is M&P's opinion that the correct market value of the property is $332,000. On page 4, we have the summary of the city's assessment of the property with the same characteristics that have been listed in the assessor's disclosure. And on page 3, we have our summary of the requested value. It's based on comparable sales with a average or typical selling price of $263.13 per square foot. On page 4, we have the assessment map, or sorry, on page 6, we have the assessment map and satellite map of the subject property. On page 7, we have a couple of photographs of the property. And on page 8, we have the sales that I analyzed in order to come to the requested assessed value, which reflects the actual market value of the property. So we have a number of comparable sales. They're all near the subject property: 494 Oxford Street, 926 Lindsay Street, 415 Beaverbrook, 496 Beaverbrook, 213 Niagara, 250 Centennial, and 454 Brock Street. So the assessor pointed to one comparable sale that supports the assessed value. I've analyzed 7 comparable sales, all which support a lower market value. 3 of the assessor's 4 comparable sales supported a lower market value. All of my comparable sales support a lower market value. So on a per square foot basis, these are all similar to the subject property, similar square footage, similar age built, all between 1946, and the youngest property is from 1958. One property from 1927, but the majority of these comparable sales are all in that post-World War II period between 1946 and 48. So in determining the assessed value for the subject property, we took the median sale price, looking at the similar properties. It's a statistical good way to have a solid market value instead of just taking the average. You remove those fluctuations, and that's where we get the requested value based on the median of $263.13 per square foot. And now actually, if you look at the sale price of these comparables, the highest sale price was $325,000. The market value that I'm requesting for the subject property is actually significantly higher, or slightly higher, than all of these comparable sales. For the board's convenience, I've also included photos on pages 9 and 10 of the comparable sales. And again, for the board's convenience, on page 11, I've included a map showing the location of the comparable sales in relation to the subject property. So again, to summarize, the subject property has been overassessed. Based on the analysis of comparable sales, M&P has determined the correct market value of the subject property, and it is $332,000. And respectfully, I would ask the board to revise the assessed value to reflect its correct market value. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I apologize again for not allowing you to do that earlier.
No need to apologize. I was in a hearing in Altona last night, and same thing happened. So it's very common. No need to apologize, but thank you.
All right, Madam Assessor, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do. So my first question is regarding the condition of the property. I'm wondering if you can give us information on what kinds of renovations have been done at this property?
Yes, in speaking to the owner of the property has been leased out to a tenant for the last, I believe, 15 or so years. And in that time, no renovations have been done to the property. The last time renovations would have been 1970 or 1980. So pretty typical house, unrenovated house in River Heights. The roof needs to be replaced and the windows are all dual pane. So I would say it's mostly, or it is unrenovated. It hasn't really been updated in the last 30 or 40 years, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, thank you. And did you bring any photos to show the condition on the interior?
I was not able to receive those photos from the owner of the property in time for the disclosure to be submitted.
Okay. I'm just going to move on to the list of comparable sales that you presented earlier. So I guess my first question is just regarding the building type of the sales. I can't help but to notice that only one sale, 213 Niagara, is a two-story property. The subject is a two-story property. Is there a reason that you haven't provided sales of other two-story properties?
Generally, people who are looking to buy a home are looking at the square footage and the utility that a home provides. So I went off of properties that were similar in terms of square footage, as opposed to filtering my search to find two-story properties. Story and a half, two-story provide the same level of utility to market participants. And it's the square footage that ultimately is the main driver, and location is the main driver of home values.
So in other words, a home that has a full two-story would be the same to a prospective buyer as a home that has a 1.5 story and where they've lost, part of the second floor to a low roof.
In my analysis of the market, I saw no difference between two-story sales in River Heights and 1.5 story sales. It was the square footage that was the main factor in terms of what was driving market values and the location.
That's interesting because just comparing the sales that you provided, which are not two-story, to the sales that I provided, which are two-story, I actually do see a difference just in those few, but I'm okay. And so just for comparable number 1, 494 Oxford Street, were you aware that that property was listed as requiring foundation repair?
494 Oxford?
Yeah.
I was aware, yes, and I believe it is the lowest one.
And does the subject
sale
property
price per
require
square foot.
foundation work as well?
Excuse me, I would like to finish answering your question. That property sold for the lowest on a square foot basis, and that low sale price reflects the foundation work that was needed.
Right. And just to clarify, does the subject property require foundation work?
As far as I'm aware, it does not require foundation work.
Thank you. And in looking through some of the other sales that you provided, I noticed that 415 Beaverbrook, I was not able to find that address. That address doesn't seem to exist. Can you give some more information about where that sale came from?
It's possible it could have been a typo, but I can double check. That should probably read 416 Beaverbrook, maybe.
Okay, maybe we'll just strike that one since we're not sure where that one came from. Okay, and then I was also wondering about you had mentioned that the property hasn't had much in terms of renovations and that it has 2-pane windows. Were those windows replaced at some point in the fairly recent future, or in the fairly recent past, or do you know when they were replaced? Because when I was checking on Google Maps, they looked like to be fairly new windows, as far as I could tell from Google Maps.
As far as I'm aware, I'm going off of what I was told by the property owner, and my understanding is that they're dual pane windows and they haven't been replaced recently.
Okay. And my last question is just regarding the location of the properties. So I'm looking now at the map that you have on page 11 of your evidence. I'm seeing that, I think the house kind of in the middle of the map is representing the subject property. And I'm seeing that that the comparable properties are kind of spread out throughout South River Heights, North River Heights, and Sir John Franklin. Is there a reason that you weren't looking within the subject neighborhood?
all those
for
properties
comparables?
are within the subject neighborhood of River Heights.
Okay, so you're just looking at kind of a more expanded River Heights.
I was looking for properties that were similar in terms of year built and square footage.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, do you have any questions of the applicant?
I do not.
Ms. Deloro, any questions of the applicant?
I do not have anything. Thank you.
Thank you. And my questions have been asked and answered, so I am wondering, Madam Assessor, would you like to make a summary?
Yes, thank you. Just to summarize, I do feel that the comparable properties I have brought today are quite comparable to the subject property. All are in mostly original condition. All are in North River Heights, which is a much tighter neighborhood than just the general larger River Heights area. Most were built within the same time frame as the subject, similar in area. Most of the features are very similar to the subject property, and definitely looking at the time adjusted sale prices, the subject assessed value falls in line with the comparables that I was able to find. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, would you like to make a summary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have a desire for summation. As per the Municipal Assessment Act, the onus is on the assessor to prove that the market value or the assessed value is correct. The assessor has provided one sale in support of the assessed value. I've provided 7 in support of my assessed or my market value. And if you include her other 3 market sales, we actually have 10 sales in support of a lower assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we could please take a 5-minute break before we hear the next item.
Yes.
I've got, thank you for your patience, everyone. Having concluded item 10, we will move on to item 11. 277 Waterloo Street. Madam Assessor, if you'd like to make your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So the roll number of the subject property is 1205-002-8000. Street address is 277 Waterloo Street. This property is located in North River Heights. It is a 2-story home built in 2023. The living area is 2,782 square feet. The basement is a full basement, which is finished. 4 full bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, 1 shower, air conditioning, a fireplace, and a multiple attached garage. The lot size for the subject property is 4,820 square feet, and the land influences are external corner and light traffic. So the current 2025 assessed value of the subject property is $1,406,000. Comparable number 1 is 258 Ash Street, also located in North River Heights. Also a 2-story home built in 2021, so also a new build, same as the subject property. Comparable number 1 has a living area of 2,391 square feet, so it is a smaller home than the subject. Does have a full basement, which is finished. 3 full bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, 1 shower, air conditioning, a fireplace, and multiple attached garage. The lot size for comparable number 1 is 4,823 square feet. This property sold in June of 2021, and the time adjusted sale price is $1,285,000. And the time adjusted sale price per square foot is $537.43 per square foot. Comparable number 2 is 204 Waterloo Street, also in North River Heights. This property, again, is a 2-story built in 2020, so a new build like the subject property. Living area is 2,558 square feet. So again, it is smaller than the subject property. This property has a full basement, which is finished, 3 full bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, 1 shower, air conditioning, a fireplace, and a multiple attached garage. The lot size of comparable number 2 is 4,822 square feet. This property sold in October 2020 for $1 million, and the time adjusted sale price is $1,390,400. The time adjusted sale price per square foot is $543.55. Comparable number 3, 444 Waverly Street. Also in North River Heights, also a two-story, built in 2021. Living area is 2,450 square feet. So again, this property is smaller than the subject property. Full basement, which is finished, full bathroom, 3 full bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, 1 shower, air conditioning, fireplace, and a multiple attached garage. Lot size on comparable number 3 is 5,857 square feet. This property sold in November 2021, and the time adjusted sale price is $1,273,700. Time adjusted sale price per square foot is $519.88. And finally, comparable number 4, 99 Campbell Street. This property is located in the area of Wellington Crescent, so it's an adjacent neighborhood. Also a two-story, built in 2022. Living area is 2,502 square feet. So again, this property is also smaller than the subject property. Full basement, which is finished, 3 full bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, 1 shower, air conditioning, fireplace, multiple attached garage. The lot size of comparable number 4 is 4,795 square feet. This property sold in August of 2022, and the time adjusted sale price is $1,352,300. The time adjusted sale price per square foot is $540.49. So looking at the comparable properties I brought today, I do feel these properties are all quite comparable to the subject property. Probably one of the biggest differences is that they are all smaller than the subject property. So in consideration of the living area of 277 Waterloo Street, which is the subject, I do think that the assessed value of $1,406,000, or just over $500 per square foot, is supported by the comparable properties that I brought today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, do you have questions of the assessor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a number of questions. Ms. Nichols, looking at your comparable sales, I see that none of them share the external corner and light traffic influence. Is that correct?
Yes, that is right.
Would you consider traffic to have a positive or negative impact on real estate values?
I would expect that a light traffic influence would have a fairly minimal impact on a property that's valued at $1.4 million overall.
Okay, light traffic does have something of a negative influence, correct?
It would have a negative influence, yeah.
Thank you. In searching for comparable sales to support the assessment, did you find any newer homes that were located in River Heights that had a light traffic influence?
When I was looking for comparable sales, I was looking for homes that were as close as in size as possible. I felt that was a more important factor, because I do think that the light traffic, although it does have a negative influence, as already mentioned, I don't think it's such a huge influence that we can't, that we should discount the size of the property instead.
Ms. Nichols, how familiar are you with the development process when a new home, these are all infill homes, correct?
They are.
There would have been an old house. They wouldn't have been vacant lots. There would have been an old house that was demolished and a new house erected, correct?
Probably. I mean, some of them could have been subdivided, I guess. I'm not sure. I don't have that level of detail, but I assume so. Mm-hmm.
And so are you aware typically the contract that a buyer would enter with a developer or a home builder, the purchase price looking at your sales, say comparable one, for instance, the home buyer would have signed a contract to purchase the lot and have the new house developed for $1.225 million, correct?
Sometimes the builder has already built the home and then the purchaser is just purchasing it from them.
So generally, and I represent and work with a number of home builders and developers, in purchasing the new home, the home buyer is purchasing the lot, and included in that purchase price, they have a house that's already on it that's then demolished, and the new house is built. So in looking at your sale prices of these properties, all over $500 a square foot, included in that purchase price would have been the older house that was then demolished. So considering the area, these homes would have sold for, say, $250,000, and then they would have been erected with a new home. So if we were to deduct $250,000 from these sale prices, the price per square foot would drop into the $400 range. Sorry, I dropped my.
I'm not following your line of reasoning. Why are we deducting first of all, why are we deducting the cost of demolishing from the sale prices?
So when the home buyer enters into the contract with the developer, they're purchasing the existing home, which is then demolished and the new house is built. So I guess my question for you is, are you aware of how the sale price, what portion of the sale price represents the existing property that was then demolished?
Okay, so as far as I know, these properties, so for comparables 1 and 2, as far as I know, were not purchased that way. Like these were just built and they were listed on MLS and sold for their sale prices. Comparable number 3, I wrote down, was a first-time sale and was not constructed at the time of sale. So this property was already owned by a builder who would have demolished the building. And so when this property sold, it sold for the time adjusted sale price, 1.274, I guess. And that would have just been the cost of the land plus the construction of the home. And same with 99 Campbell, that was a first-time sale. So that was sold from the builder to a homeowner already constructed, or at least partially constructed.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Deloro, any questions?
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor?
Yeah, with the comparables, would there, like, I know the applicant is touched on the light traffic and external corner issue. Would that, I guess it's hard to say with your comparables, would there be something like, or an amount or a percentage that you would maybe put on those to bring their price down based on that as well? Or like, would it be something to consider and be to skew your pricing down slightly on those?
Yeah. So I can't give you like a specific amount. Like the value of the light traffic in our model is not that much. And I can't tell you what it would be for every property, but I know it's not a huge reduction for light traffic. So traffic is kind of broken up depending on how heavy the traffic is. So light traffic is kind of at the bottom of the traffic kind of spectrum, and then there's medium and there's heavy traffic as well. So for light traffic, it's not a huge adjustment. I think for these properties, definitely something to keep in mind is that all of these comparables are smaller than the subject property. The subject property is 2,782 square feet, and the comparables are like comparable number 1 is 2391. That's quite a bit smaller. So any difference from the traffic, I think, for these properties would definitely be offset by the increase in value because the subject property is larger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so, thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions. Mr. Applicant, would you like to make your presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Beginning on page 1 of my disclosure, again, the property we're dealing with today is 277 Waterloo Street, file number 24-875, with an assessed value of $1.406 million. So further to what we were just discussing about the traffic influence, again, as per the Municipal Assessment Act, the onus is on the assessor to prove that their value is correct. The assessor didn't do anything to quantify the influence on market value that traffic has. I have quantified that influence, and I'll get to that later in my presentation. But I thought just on that note, I would mention that I was able to, and in analyzing paired sales, I was able to quantify the influence that traffic has on market value. So on page 4 of my disclosure, we have the same information that was provided on the assessor's disclosure, just with the building type, living area, etc. And now on page 5, we have M&P's determination of what the market value is for the subject property. So we did look at comparable sales and the selling price on per square foot. And then we were able to quantify the influence that the traffic on Kingsway has on market values in River Heights. And that's how we determined. So based on comparable sales, we determined that the market value wasn't too far off from what the assessment department had determined at about 1.16 million. But then we were able to quantify that traffic influence as well. And we found that properties on Kingsway sell on average for about 25% less than properties that aren't on Kingsway and don't have that negative traffic influence. On page 6, we have just the assessment overview with the map and the satellite map. Since the property had been newly constructed, I wasn't able to include any photographs of the property in time for the disclosure deadline. So we just have the computer-generated image of the property there. And then on page 8, we have a total of 6 newly built comparable sales in River Heights: 344 Waterloo, 203 Cordova, 148 Renfrew, 420 Campbell Street, 204 Lindsay, and 181 Burbank. Now, looking at these comparable sales, they're all 2-story properties, most of them over 2,000 square feet, and all sold within the reference period as well. I do have a couple of notes on the comparable sales. Less weight should be given probably to 204 Lindsay and 181 Burbank. These were more of your typical River Heights infills where a lot was subdivided, and the properties include a lower level secondary suite. However, those lower level secondary suites do significantly increase the livable square footage of the properties and bring them closer in line to the subject property. So on a square footage basis, the subject property has been assessed quite high in comparison to new comparable sales. It certainly seems that the assessor has cherry-picked properties that sold for over $500 a square foot. But now looking at other comparable sales of new properties in River Heights, we can see that in reality, most of these new homes are selling in the $400 square foot range. And for the board's convenience, on page 9 and 10, I've included photographs of some of the comparable sales. Some of the properties are newer and we weren't able to find photos. So fortunately, there isn't a photo of 203 Cordova and 181 Burbank being a new property. We weren't able to find a picture of the new building. And so I can kind of disregard the photo of 181 Burbank as that is the old building. On page 11 of the disclosure, again, for the board's convenience, I've included a map of the comparable sales in relation to the subject property. And we can see that all the comparable sales are quite close in proximity to the subject property. Now, in determining the influence that the traffic has on Kingsway on market value, I was able to find 4 sales, all within the reference period of assessment. And so I'll start with the first table, 279 Niagara Street and 275 Niagara Street. These properties are right next door to one another in terms of square footage and age built. They're practically identical, about a 70 square foot difference and a 1-year age difference. However, the sale price is significantly different for the 2 properties, and both properties haven't been renovated. They are pretty well as identical as you're going to find in terms of 2 properties. However, the one property that is having the traffic come flying past at all hours of the day, all hours of the night, That property sold for 25% less than the property that is not on Kingsway and is not having to have traffic coming by it all the time. Same thing, 294 Ash and 280 Ash. 294 Ash Street being on Kingsway and 280 Ash being an internal lot, not on Kingsway. Again, we have very similar sizes, about 100 square foot difference. Age slightly different. Lot size the same. And the older property actually sold for more, despite being 25 years older. However, again, most of this can be attributed to Kingsway and the traffic influence on market value. So again, looking at these two properties, practically identical. However, this time there was almost a 30% difference in terms of market value. So in looking at these two properties, 275 and 279 Niagara are the better of the four comparables. So that's why we went with the 25% reduction. The impact from the traffic, 25% as opposed to the 29, because some of that 29, there might be a slight difference just because they're a bit farther away from one another, and 280 Ash is slightly larger. So between 25 and 30% is the impact that the traffic has on market value in River Heights. And then concluding on page 13, we've analyzed the comparable sales of new homes in River Heights, determined a fair market value of $416.52 per square foot, and then adjusting for the traffic influence, and that's how we arrive at the value of $869,000, which, if you look one last time on page 8 of the disclosure, that $869,000 mark falls right within the comparable sale values. And that, with that being said, again, I would like to respectfully ask the board to revise the assessment to reflect the fair and accurate market value for the subject property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Assessor, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do. I have several questions. I think I'll start with some questions about the Kingsway influence, since that's where you ended your presentation. I'm looking at the percentage that's being attributed to what you're calling the Kingsway influence. And I can't help but to wonder, did you consider like that? It seems like a very, very high adjustment to make for light traffic. Did you consider that there might be other influences that are impacting the difference between each of these two properties when you were doing your analysis?
I did. I reviewed both sales. I looked at the photos. I read the notes on the properties, and I found no real material differences between the properties. And I was able to isolate that value difference, and it's due to the traffic. I was able to find no other serious material or market differences between the properties.
So for example, in the second set of sales, 280 Ash is 2174 square feet, where 294 Ash is 2016. You don't think that the size of the property there would have impacted the price?
I do think it would have had an impact, and that's why I've gone with the 25% and not the 29%. So
Right.
probably a small, well, I mean, it's about 150-ish, give or take, square foot difference. So not a huge difference in terms of the square footage, but enough that I placed more reliance on the other comparables.
Okay. So I guess then I'm, maybe moving up to the first set of sales there. What is, like, you've put renovated? No. What does that mean? Does that mean that both of these properties have had absolutely no renovations? Has one of them had a little bit done? The other one has had does one have foundation problems? Like, do we have any further information there?
Yeah, and looking at those properties, reviewing the photos, they were in materially identical quality, I would say. Floors were the same oak floors that most homes in River Heights had. I wasn't able to see any sort of foundation issues. Both properties are still exist and are lived in. I wasn't able to find any sort of material or foundational faults that would have any sort of impact on market value.
I'm also noticing that there is no time adjustment being applied. So what about the difference in the sale dates? Do you think that could have impacted the adjustment?
Again, there wasn't a huge increase between those, or huge difference in terms of market values between those two dates. We're talking about roughly 7 or 8 months difference. The market in River Heights has always been in demand, and so I don't see the sale date having a huge material impact on the value.
Because I'm looking at these dates and I'm seeing that 279 Niagara sold in July of 2021. From that date to the reference date, if I'm not mistaken, that value would be going up. Whereas from March of 2022, as we saw with one of our previous comparables, that value would very likely be coming down. So you don't think that that would be maybe evening out the value a little bit, at least? Not that I'm saying there's no difference to the traffic, but
I as far as I'm aware, between those two time periods, market values didn't change by 25%.
no, not by 25%, of course, but do you think that there could have been some sort of evening out between the sale dates here? Because this is, the market is fluctuating over time, right? Sometimes, and in fact, we've seen it sometimes going up, sometimes coming down a little bit. You don't think that could have impacted the values of these properties?
Interest rates were lower in 2021 as compared to 2022. The property 275 Niagara sold for more despite selling during a time when interest rates were higher.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I also noticed that there's no mention of building type. Are these properties the same type of property? Are they both 2 stories?
They're
one
both
stories?
the same type. My understanding, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, they're both story and a half or bungalows.
Okay, so it sounds like you're not
But
sure.
they are both the same property type.
Okay, I have a few questions regarding the comparable sales that you have listed on page 8 of your evidence as well. I guess I'll just start with, again, 344 Waterloo. When I was looking for that sale, I couldn't find it. That property exists, but I don't see a sale on that property since 2006. Do you have any more information about that sale or where you got it?
I believe it was a market sale, or otherwise I wouldn't have included it.
Okay, it's just that that sale doesn't exist.
I believe, yes, it does exist. What are you basing it not existing on?
Well, I looked in MLS and it wasn't listed there. I looked in our system and it wasn't a private sale in our system.
Were you looking right now? Do you have rebuttal for this? Do you have anything in your evidence supporting that? Because as far as I'm aware, it did sell on the 9th of June 2021.
Okay, it's just interesting because I wasn't able to find any information about it. I'm also wondering about.
Are you accusing me of fabricating a sale?
No, I'm just asking for more information because I wasn't able to find any information about it.
Well, then you should have done more research, because I was able to find it and I included it.
Well, I'm just saying that I wasn't able to find it, but thank you. I'm looking at 203 Cordova, 148 Renfrew, and 420 Campbell. I noted that those are all first-time sales. I'm wondering if you would agree that often first-time sales are lower than when a property resells due to lack of landscaping, lack of, things like curtains, often appliances aren't included.
What is your question?
Would you agree that first-time sales are often lower than when a property has resold?
No, I would not agree with that.
So despite the fact that the homeowner now has to purchase curtains and appliances and do the landscaping, you don't think that would impact the price of the property?
As far as I was aware, the properties were sold with landscaping and with appliances.
Okay, yeah, first time sales are often lacking some of those things.
Well, in
Um,
general, that might be true, but for these properties, I don't believe that comment is relevant.
Do any of the three properties that I just mentioned have a finished basement like the subject does?
As far as I'm aware, they all had finished basements, or they were semi-finished.
Okay, because when I looked on MLS, they all said that they were just insulated.
I would have to double check. I was under the impression that they were either finished or semi-finished.
And the one other thing I wanted to ask you about was the living area, which I'm noticing for all of the comparables that you provided, the living area is smaller or less than the subject property, some as low as 1,646 square feet. Do you think that living area would impact the value of the property
Well,
compared to the subject?
the two smaller ones, as I noted on page 8 of my disclosure, those properties include secondary suites in the basement, which increases the livable square footage of the property for 204 Lindsay to almost 2,700 square feet, and for 181 Boardbank to almost 2,423 square feet, as well as those are legal secondary units, which potential buyers can then rent out and have rental income. And if anything, it makes them a more attractive property.
And I did see that, and I do have some questions regarding that as well. But I guess my question is, do you think that a smaller living area would have an impact on the value compared to a property like the subject, which is quite a bit larger?
As I just said, in terms of their living area, they're practically the same size.
And then I guess what I'll do is I'll just move on to my questions about those last two properties, 204 Lindsay and 181 Boardbank Street, which you had mentioned have legal secondary units in the basement, which increases the livable square footage. Are you aware of the IAAO and the AIC standards, as well as the Manitoba Real Estate Board standards for including basement area in livable square footage?
Can you repeat your question?
Are you aware of the Manitoba Real Estate Board standards, as well as standards from the AIC and the IAAO regarding including finished basement area as part of the living area, the livable square footage?
In what context are you speaking to those standards?
In the context where we're including basement finish area as living area.
Again, I don't see what you're trying to accomplish with that question.
Well, I guess what I'm really wondering is why you've included basement finish area as part of the living area when that's not something that is done, just kind of as a standard across assessments, appraisal, real estate. Why are we including basement finish here now?
Because it's for these two properties, it's like a rental unit. It's a livable space. It's not a closed off basement. It has its own entrance. It's livable space. That's why I've included it.
Okay. So in that vein, those properties are really different types of properties than the subject property, which is just a standard residential home. Is that right?
I wouldn't agree with that, no.
The subject property is not a standard residential home?
The 204 Lindsay and 181, they are standard in today's market for new homes. I would say that they're standard, yes.
So they have separate entrances to legal secondary suites in their basements, but you don't feel that that's different from a regular home that doesn't have that?
It is different, but in terms of the market for new homes in Winnipeg, it's becoming increasingly common.
Okay, so it sounds like a kind of a different type of property to me. Okay, thank you. That was all the questions that I had.
Now, I just want to interject. The assessor questioned if 344 Waterloo Street exists. Anyone can pull up Google Maps and go to Google Street View and see the property with the for sale sign that says sold. So again, I don't appreciate that the assessor, again, the onus is on the assessor to prove the assessment is correct. And the assessor is trying to accuse me under oath of fabricating a sale, which I think is totally unacceptable.
Not that the property doesn't exist. Sorry, just saying that I wasn't able to find the sale when I was searching for it on MLS or in our system.
Okay, we're gonna take it to questions from the other board members, and then you will both have an opportunity to summarize. I appreciate your presentations. So, Mr. Kraus, I'm wondering if you have any questions at all of the applicant.
I did not understand.
Ms. Del Oro, do you have any questions of the applicant?
I do. Can you speak to the finishings? Do you take that into consideration if we're just looking at the photographs that you provided of the subject property at page 7? And if we compare that to your pages 9 and 10, would you say that for example, the facade, we don't have interior photos, but would you say the facade would be different quality to your comparables?
I would say the facade and the interior would be quite similar and in line with the comparables 148 Renfrew and 420 Campbell.
Okay, okay, thank you.
I'm just wondering about one thing in terms of my questions, and that is for the homes that you have used as comparisons. For the ones that are new, do you know if they were sold with the existing homes on them that were then demolished and a new building rebuilt, or a new home rebuilt?
So for these properties, I wasn't able to determine if they were demolished by the developer built the new home and then sold it, or if they were if it was a type of agreement where it was purchased with the existing home, and in that purchase price, the demolition was included. Unfortunately, for these properties, I wasn't able to determine that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Assessor, do you have a summary?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Just in summary, the comparables that I brought today are all fairly similar to the subject property. In my opinion, the biggest difference is that they're all smaller in terms of living area compared to the subject property, and yet they all do support the subject assessed value. So I think taking into consideration, even if we made a minor adjustment for traffic to each of the comparables, if we also account for the smaller size of each of the comparables, I do think that the value is still well supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, do you have a summary you would like to make?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have a desire for summation. So again, I just want to reiterate that the onus is on the assessor to prove that the assessment is correct. The assessor has included sales of comparable properties without accounting for the fact that existing homes would have been demolished, and that would have been included in the purchase price. And then again, I want to point to the fact that I was able to quantify the influence that traffic has on properties that are Kingsway adjacent. And I feel that my market value of the property is very well supported. And again, I would respectfully ask the board to revise the assessment to reflect the fair market value. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your presentation. Having concluded item 11-277 Waterloo Street, let's move on to item 12, which is 540 Cordova Street. Madam Assessor, would you like to make your presentation, please?
Yes, thank you. Just take 1 second here. So 540 Cordova Street. Roll number is 12-06-0192-000. This property is in Central River Heights. It is a 2-story home built in 1952. Living area is 1,262 square feet. It has a full basement, which is finished, 1 full bathroom, 1 half bathroom, no air conditioning, and a single detached garage. The lot size of the subject property is 4,191 square feet. And the line influences for the subject property are external corner, light traffic, and park. The current 2025 assessed value of the subject is $365,000. Comparable number 1 is 591 Oxford Street, also located in Central River Heights, also a two-story, built in 1953. It's very close in age to the subject property, 1,248 square feet of living area, full basement, which is finished, 1 full bathroom, 1 half bathroom, air conditioning, and a single detached garage. The lot size of comparable number 1 is 4,798 square feet. This property sold in September 2021, and the time adjusted sale price is $416,400. Comparable number 2 is 448 Cordova Street, again, also in Central River Heights, also a two-story, built in 1951, living area of 1,332 square feet. This is slightly larger than the subject property. This property has a full basement, which is finished. 1 full bathroom, 1 half bathroom, air conditioning, and a multiple detached garage. The lot size of comparable number 2 is 4,610 square feet, and it does have a school land influence. The comparable number 2 sold in January of 2021, and the time adjusted sale price is $411,600. Comparable number 3 is 501 Cordova Street. Again, located in Central River Heights. Again, two-story property built in 1952. This comparable does have an effective year built of 1962. Living area is 1,262 square feet. This property has a full basement, which is finished, 1 full bathroom, 1 half bathroom, 1 shower, air conditioning, and a single detached garage. The lot size of comparable number 3 is 4,165 square feet. This property sold in March of 2022, and the time adjusted sale price is $480,000. And finally, comparable number 4, 485 Cordova Street, again located in Central River Heights, a two-story property built in 1951. This comparable has a small effective year built of 1956. Living area of 1,262 square feet, has a full basement, which is finished, 1 full bathroom, 1 half bathroom, air conditioning, and no detached structures. The lot size of comparable number 4 is 4,165 square feet. And this property sold October of 2020 for a time adjusted sale price of $416,000. So looking at the comparable properties that I was able to find, sale prices ranging from $411,600 up to $480,000. I do feel that the subject's assessed value at $365,000 is supported. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Applicant, do you have questions of the assessor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. Again, we're dealing with a subject property where we have the same influence as the previous one, external corner and light traffic. Again, my question would be, what consideration was given to the subject property and the comparables as it pertains to the traffic influence?
So the comparable properties have all sold for significantly more than the subject's assessed value. I do think that the difference between the assessed value and the comparable sale prices more than takes into account any light traffic influence there. The subject also has a park influence, which is a positive influence, and none of the comparable properties have the park influence either.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Are you aware if any of the comparable properties had been substantially renovated prior to their sale?
Yeah, so I made some notes regarding each one. Comparable number 1, I noted is mostly dated. It has a bathroom that was renovated. Comparable number 2, I noted is in original condition. Comparable number 3 is original, except for, again, a bathroom. And comparable number 4 is mostly original, possibly some flooring updated, and a partial bathroom renovation.
Now, when I was looking at my search for comparable sales, I noted that 591 Oxford did have a new kitchen or a renovated kitchen. Would a renovated kitchen have any impact on the market value of a property?
If it had a renovated kitchen, for sure, but I don't believe that property did. I can double check right now, 591 Oxford. Yeah, I'm just double checking for this property. It looks like the handle pulls of the cabinets have been replaced. It's hard to tell for sure, of course, just from the pictures. Possibly some of the bottom cabinets were, but definitely the top are look to be original with the same pulls. Flooring is original. Possibly some painted cabinets. And the counter is a laminate. Kind of hard to tell when it was put in, but
So I guess my question would be, some of the comparable sales have been renovated to some degree, others haven't. Would that be fair to say?
I would say that they're all in mostly original condition with maybe a few things done here and there, but I would still call them mostly original.
Okay, and all the comparable sales have central air conditioning, is that correct?
They do.
And the subject property, no central air conditioning, correct?
That's right.
Would central air conditioning be a positive factor, something that buyers want when they're looking for a home?
Having air conditioning would be positive, pretty minor impact of the value, but it would be positive. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Deloro, any questions of the assessor?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor?
Yeah, I was just looking at your comparable number 3, which in all aspects is pretty close, other than the fact that it doesn't have, or it has AC, and the effective year has been bumped to 62. And there's a difference of about $100 per square foot with the non-adjusted sale price. Why would would the AC and the time adjusted sales price make that big of a difference on dropping the square footage price? Or increase square footage price compared to the subject, sorry.
That was for, sorry, which property? Comparable number 3?
501 Cordova.
Yeah. So yeah, 501 Cordova, I had noted had a bathroom that was renovated. And so, yeah, I'm just looking through. I mean, there can be other factors that could influence that sale price as well. I'm noting that this property has mostly hardwood floors, except for in the kitchen, and of course the bathroom that was renovated. Maybe that had some impact there. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I could explain the exact, all the kind of, some of those factors. But I think.
Sorry, would that be possibly that the external corner light traffic of the subject will have dropped it by that amount, or?
For 501 Cordova?
No, for the subject, like the subject is $100 less per square foot.
Oh, in comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to get sort of a little bit of a understanding of.
Yeah, I understand. I think that light traffic, external corner is not something that affects the value of the property in the model, in our modeling, but light traffic does have an impact, definitely not that much of an impact. And the park influence on the subject property is something that would have a positive impact on the value. So yeah, I think, I'm not sure, again, like I wasn't able to do an inspection on this property, and I didn't receive any photos to verify the interior condition of this property. It's one of the reasons why I tried to choose comparables that are all in original or as close to original condition as I could find. But yeah, I'm not at all suggesting that the value of the subject be bumped up to 480,000. But I think that it's still supported at the 365, even taking into account any influence of the light traffic.
Thank you.
Okay, in terms of my question, I thought that the effective year built versus the year built meant renovations. Nothing to do with light traffic, nothing to do with external influences, which is a separate category, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the influences are separate from. So you're right. The effective year built usually reflects some level of renovation on a property. In this particular case, I'm not entirely sure. Like I haven't gone to look at 501 Cordova in our records. It looks like possibly there's been an error there, because when I'm looking at the photos, that's not a super renovated property. It does have the renovated bathroom though, like I mentioned. But yes, you're right. Usually the effective year built reflects some level of renovation in a property.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Mr. Applicant, if you would like to make your presentation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, the property we're dealing with this afternoon, 540 Cordova Street, with an assessed value of $365,000. File number 24-842. Beginning on page 3 of my disclosure, and I'll try to go through this disclosure rather quickly because it is a similar property to the other Waterloo property. So I'll try to move through it rather quickly, as I'm sure members of the board want to enjoy what might be the last nice fall day we get. But anyway, I'll get to the point here. So the subject property was built in 1952 and measures 1,262 square feet. The assessment of $365,000 is not reflective of market value. MNP has appraised the property, and we have determined that the correct market value of the property is just slightly lower at $332,000. On page 4 of the disclosure, we have the same summary of the property that was provided by the assessor. And then on page 5, we have MNP's valuation of the property, and we are basing the market value on a rate of $263.13 per square foot. And that is based on comparable sales. On page 6, we have the assessment map and the aerial photograph. And on page 7, we have a couple of photographs of the subject property. So these properties, again, we have discussed them previously. Big difference between the sales that I've analyzed in support of my determination of market value is that I've looked at the sales of unrenovated properties, whereas the assessor has pointed to properties that are somewhat renovated at least. The subject property has been rented out for the last 15 or so years and has not received any significant renovations. And then the comparable sales that I've looked at are similar in the sense that they're also unrenovated, and they have sold for a range between in the $250 to $270 a square foot range. On page 9, we have some photos of the comparable property sales. Same with page 10. And on page 11, we have a map showing the location of the subject property in relation to the comparable sales. So again, we do feel that the property has been overassessed. The market value as determined by the city of Winnipeg is based on either partially renovated or fully renovated sales in River Heights. Whereas we've based our valuation on properties that are unrenovated, just like the subject property. And that's how we've come to the market value of $332,000. And I would respectfully ask that the board revise the assessment to reflect the fair and accurate market value of the subject property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Assessor, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do. I'm wondering if you can maybe give some information about the condition of this property, what kind of renovations have been done here?
As far as I'm aware, and again, unfortunately, I wasn't able to provide photos of the interior of the property in time for the disclosure deadline. But my understanding is that the property hasn't been renovated since, well, probably for at least 30 or 40 years, and is in the kind of quality you would expect a tenanted property to be in, as no real sense of home ownership, no pride in home ownership there. So somewhat run down on the interior.
Okay, thank you. And I noted that these sales are the same as for, I believe, 508 Waterloo. So I'll try to run through my questions quickly. So again, I'm noticing that the subject property is a 2-story, and all but one of these sales, all but one is a 2-story, but the rest are not. Were you not able to find other 2-stories that had sold?
So again, I was looking more in terms of square footage and the utility that the properties provide, as well as their physical condition. And I chose my comparable properties based on the square footage, the utility that they provide, and their place in the market as unrenovated properties.
Okay. I noted that 213 Niagara and 250 Centennial don't have any finished basement space, whereas the subject property does. Do you think that would impact the value that these properties would sell for?
Depends on the basement. Generally, if a basement's finished, but it's a finish from the 70s, a lot of people don't like that, and they look at it as a negative. They want to tear out all the old shag carpet, get rid of the built-in ashtrays, that kind of thing. So I would look at the finished basement on a case-by-case basis. So it would really depend on the quality of the basement finish.
And what is the quality of the basement finish in the subject property?
My understanding is that the subject property, the basement finish would probably, if I'm remembering correctly, date back to the 70s. It would have your typical shag carpet. It wouldn't be a nice finished basement by any means.
Okay, but no photos to show the basement of the subject?
Again, unfortunately, I wasn't able to include photos in my disclosure.
Okay, thank you. And again, I think I had mentioned this before, but there's no time adjustment has been applied to any of these sale prices. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that goes for all of the comparables that we saw before as well, right?
That would be correct as well.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all the questions that I had regarding this property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Krebs, any questions?
I have no questions at this time.
Ms. Deloro, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
I only have one question, and that is, did you make any kind of consideration for the land influences at all?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for this property, I did try to quantify the traffic influence like I did for Kingsway. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any fleet adjacent properties. And the fleet adjacent properties I did find, I wasn't able to find comparables that were as similar as the Kingsway adjacent properties. So while I'm certain that there is an influence that could be quantified within the reference period, I just wasn't able to find the right kind of sales I need to do that kind of analysis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Assessor, I'm wondering if you have a summary?
I do, thank you. The comparable properties I brought today are all in mostly original conditions. Some have had a few things done here and there, but mostly they're not completely renovated. These are not completely renovated properties, not modernized properties. The subject property condition, we don't know what the exact condition of the subject is. We're assuming that it is also in original condition. So again, similar to the comparables that I brought today, all of the comparables have finished basements. They're all pretty close in terms of size and year built. All except for comparable number 4 have the detached garages. Although the comparables don't have the light traffic influence, they have all sold for significantly more than the current assessed value of the subject property. And I do think that despite not having light traffic or the park influence on any of the comparables, that these comparables definitely support the current value of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, summary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have a desire for summation. So again, the onus is on the assessor to prove that the assessment is correct. In her attempt to justify the assessment, Ms. Nichols has pointed to properties that at least 2 of the 4, the city has felt it necessary to increase the effective year built to reflect the renovations to the property. I provided sales that support what the market value is for unrenovated properties. The city is attempting to justify their assessment of the property based on renovated properties. And that's, again, I would humbly ask the board and respectfully ask the board to revise the assessment to reflect the fair market value of the property. Thank you.
Thank you both for your presentations. Having concluded item 12 on the agenda, we'll move to item 13, 1039 Windermere Avenue. Madam Assessor, if you'd like to make your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Roll number for the subject property is 0307-181-6000. Street address is 1039 Windermere Avenue. This property is located in Beaumont. It is a 1-story home built in 1932, living area of 640 square feet. It has a part basement, which is not finished, 1 full bathroom, no air conditioning, and a single detached garage. The assessed lot size is 5,996 square feet. The subject property has a few land influences: bus route, external corner, and light traffic. And the current 2025 assessed value of the subject property is $221,000. Comparable number 1 is 1111 Windermere Avenue. Of course, also located in Beaumont. Also a 1-story built in 1945. This property does have an effective year of 1960 on it, a living area of 710 square feet. Full basement, which is not finished, 1 full bathroom, air conditioning, and a single detached garage. The assessed lot size is the same as the subject, 5,996 square feet. Comparable number 1 also has bus route and light traffic. It was sold in August of 2022, and the time adjusted sale price is $281,100. Comparable number 2 is 1038 Windermere Avenue, also a 1-story built in 1914 with an effective year of 1929. 648 square feet of living area, full basement, which is not finished, 1 full bathroom, no air conditioning, and no detached garage. The lot size for comparable number 2 is 2,500 square feet. So it's about half the size of the subject lot. The land influences are bus route and light traffic, same as the subject. This property sold in October of 2022, and the time adjusted sale price is $161,400. Comparable number 3, 1121 Windermere Avenue, also 1-story built in 1930 with an effective year of 1950, 704 square feet of living area, full basement, which is finished for this comparable, 1 full bathroom, no air conditioning, and a multiple detached garage. The lot size, again, is same as the subject, 5,996 square feet, and those same 2 land influences, bus route and light traffic. The comparable number 3 sold on March of 2021 with a time adjusted sale price of $323,500. And finally, comparable number 4, 1147 Rosemount Avenue, a 1-story built in 1946, 672 square feet of living area, full basement, which is not finished, no air conditioning, single detached garage. Lot size is 5,163 square feet. Land influence is external corner. The sale date was October 2021, and the time adjusted sale price was $278,000. Looking at the sale prices of the comparables that I brought today, ranging from a low of 161,400, and that's for comparable number 2, which has a lot size that's half of the subject property, up to 323,500. I do think that the subject at 221,000 is I do think that that value is supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, do you have any questions of the assessor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions for the assessor. So just beginning with this question really applies to all 4 of the comparable sales. I just want to confirm with the assessor, do all the comparable sales have a full basement while the subject property has a part basement? Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Would you say that a full basement versus a partial basement, would there be any difference between the market values?
Typically, I would say that a full basement would probably be more valuable, like more desirable, I guess.
Thank you. And then looking at comparables 1 through 3, I see we have year built 1945, effective year built 1960, year built 1914, effective year built 1929, comparable 3, year built 1930, effective year built 1950, and then the subject property, year built 1932, effective year built 1932. So how does the city determine that effective year built, and why was the effective year built increased for those comparables?
So comparable number 1, I noted had some, from what I could tell from the photos, it looked to be some older updates in the kitchen and the bathroom. Comparable number 2 had some basic updates to kitchen and bathroom, possibly some flooring as well. And same with comparable number 3. Comparable number 4 was in original condition when it was purchased.
Okay, so comparables 1 through 3 had been renovated to a good enough extent that they were flagged by the Assessment and Taxation Department, and someone decided to increase the effective age to reflect the renovations.
Sometimes the effective year builts have been on the property for a while and is maybe not something that has been recently reviewed. I couldn't say for sure regarding those 3 properties since I'm not looking at any one of those 3. All I know is that, I made notes about the condition when I was looking at the pictures in MLS.
Thank you. Are you aware if any of the properties, any of the comparable properties were purchased by developers and then either subdivided or redeveloped?
I couldn't say who purchased any one of these properties. I know that Rosemount was purchased again in original condition and demolished. And then, I believe that one was subdivided for building. Mm-hmm.
Would you agree that developers, corporations operate under different parameters than your typical home buyer?
Well, I'm not a developer, so I don't know if I could say, I can't give too much information about how developers work in that sense, but the home was still listed on MLS, so still went through kind of that open market process.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. I wonder if Mr. Kraus, you have any questions?
I do not.
Ms. Deloro?
Just one. Sorry, did you say you had an opportunity to inspect the property or no?
No, unfortunately, I wasn't able to inspect and I did not receive any photos of the interior of this property.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. I have no questions. Mr. Applicant, if you would like to make your presentation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, just beginning on page 1 of the disclosure, the property we're discussing today, 1039 Windermere Avenue, file number 24-835, with an assessed value of $221,000. Moving on to page 3 of the disclosure, again, the subject property we're discussing is a 640 square foot single family dwelling built in 1932. The property has been assessed with a market value of $221,000. MNP has analyzed sales of similar properties, and we have determined that the market value for the property is $163,000. On page 4 of my disclosure, we have the summary that is again also in the assessor's disclosure. And on page 5, we have the requested assessed value. Again, MNP has analyzed sales of comparable properties, unrenovated properties, and we've determined that an appropriate market value for the property is $255.33 per square foot. And that's how we've arrived at the requested assessed value of $163,000. On page 6, we have the aerial overview and assessment map. The satellite photo included on page 6. We can see the red arrow indicating where the property is, and we can see its proximity to a rail line and commercial land uses as well. And on page 7, we have a few photos of the outside of the property, overgrown trees and shrubs. And we can see that the property isn't in particularly good shape on the outside. On page 8, we have a couple of comparable sales that were analyzed. 3 of the 4 are in West Fort Garry, and 1 is in East Fort Garry. The properties are all similar in terms of their age and similar in terms of the square footage. All but 1 of the properties sold for under $300 a square foot. The subject property has been assessed at $345 a square foot, whereas the average and median sale price for properties similar to the subject are both below $300 a square foot. Unfortunately, on page 9, we only have 2 photos of comparable sales. My understanding is that 1135 Riverwood and 1081 Parker have since been demolished and redeveloped. On page 10, for the board's convenience, I have included a map indicating the location of the subject property in relation to the comparable sales. On page 11, we have a summary, again, basing our market value of the subject property on the comparable sales with a rate of $255.33 per square foot, which results in a market value of $163,000. And I would like to respectfully ask the board to revise the assessment to reflect the fair market value. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Assessor, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Sorry, I think you're on mute.
Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry, is that better?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do. I wanted to ask first about the condition of the property. Can you give some more information about what kind of renovations have been done here, what condition this property is in?
Sure, yeah. Given that the property is tenanted, I wasn't able to include photos in time for this submission. But in speaking to the owner, my understanding is that since she acquired the property, would have been probably over 30 years ago, that no renovations have been done to the property, and it has been tenanted ever since. So I would say overall it's quite run down.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm just looking through the comparables that you provided today, again, I'm noticing no time adjustments were provided. Is that correct?
Correct.
And is there a reason that you're not providing any time adjustments for the comparable properties?
Yeah, my reason for not providing those is that we know in 2021 we had the market go way up and then we had it cool off as interest rates rose. So in looking at these sales, I look at that and I say, okay, we had the market go up and then we had the market go down. I feel that it evened out enough that a sale price adjustment wasn't warranted.
Even though at the back of your evidence, it says, and I'm just looking at page 29 here, under time adjustments, it says the last line of the second paragraph, even after the decline, prices as of April 1st, 2023 remained higher than they were as of April 1st, 2021. So even though overall prices did go up, you don't think that should be reflected in the sale prices?
I feel that the sale prices reflect the market value as of April 1st, 2023. That's right.
Okay. Just, okay. Okay, and then I was looking at, and I think maybe you already mentioned this, 1135 Riverwood Avenue, 1081 Parker Avenue, and 943 Calrossi Boulevard. When I was looking at MLS, I noticed that definitely, I can't recall what MLS said about Riverwood, but definitely 1081 Parker and 943 Calrossi Boulevard. MLS said no access to the house, sold as is. So basically, these properties are sold like it was like a lot, like for the land value only. Are you suggesting that the subject property is in the same condition?
I believe that if the subject property were to be sold, no one would live in it. It would be in the condition where it has a long-term tenant that has lived there for 30 odd years. I wouldn't see anyone purchasing that property to live in it. It would be more of a development opportunity. That would be the target market that anyone selling that property would be looking for.
And have you inspected this property or seen the interior?
I have not. I'm relying on a conversation I had with the property owner.
Okay. So this property is not just in original condition, but is so run down that it would be a tear down, and it should basically be valued at land only.
Well, I mean, anyone can look at a property and say, oh, I can fix this up. Like I looked at the sales of Calrossi and Parker, Riverwood. Those properties could have been renovated. Depends if the buyer is willing to take that on. It's really a decision that a purchaser would make.
Okay. Okay, and so I'm just looking at the map that was provided on page 10. And I'm not sure which property is on the other side of, I believe that would be Pembina Highway there. Yeah, so I'm not sure which property is on the other side from the subject. Do you know which property is located in the point near?
943 Calrossi is on the east side.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so that one's in a different area than the subject property. Okay. Okay, that was all the questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols.
Ms. Del Oro, any questions?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Mr. Price, any questions?
Yeah, just for clarification, just which the assessor was asking you about a property that was torn down. Which one was that? Was that Riverwood, Parker, or Calrossi, or were they all bought as tear down?
My understanding is that 943 Calrossi, I don't know for a fact it was torn down, but when it was sold, it was advertised more as a demolition property. Same with 1081 Parker.
And then, do you know the lot sizes for those three properties?
I believe, and I could double check, but I believe that they are all either between 25 feet frontage and 40 feet frontage. I believe Calrossi is 50 feet frontage. But if you'd like, I can just double check quickly.
Yeah, it just helps a little bit with the comparables if you can.
Yeah, give me 1 second here. I'll start with 1038 Windermere.
That one I have from the assessors.
Okay, perfect. So 1135. So 41 feet frontage, total lot size 4,077 square feet, and that's for 1135 Riverwood. 1081 Parker. One moment. 1081 Parker, 42 square feet, or sorry, 42 feet frontage, total lot size of 4,273 square feet. And 943 Calrossi, 30 feet for Calrossi, and a total lot size of 3,476 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My questions have been asked and answered. Madam Assessor, would you like to make a summary?
Yes, thank you. So the comparables that I brought today are the first three are on Windermere, same as the subject property. The fourth comparable is in the immediate area of Beaumont. All are very similar properties. The first comparables 1, 2, and 3 have had some level of renovation, which I think is reflected in the sale prices of those properties. Comparable number 4 was in original condition when it was sold, and it's in the end that home was demolished as well, so it was in pretty rough condition. And I do think that looking at the sale prices of the comparable properties, the assessed value for the subject at $221,000 is still well below where the comparables are indicating the value should be. Again, keeping in mind that comparable number 2, the lot size there is 2,500 square feet, significantly smaller than the subject property, and the subject property, has a lot size that is larger than even the comparables that were brought forward by the applicant. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, a summary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd like to provide a summary. So again, like with similar or previous properties, the assessor is basing the market value of the subject property on renovated sales. All but one of the comparable sales have effective year built adjusted to reflect renovations, as well as the comparable sales that the assessor is using to justify the assessment have full basements, while the subject property only has a partial basement. And again, I've pointed to properties that were in rough shape, just as the subject property, and unrenovated, just as the subject property, and they provide far better market support for what the market value ought to be for the subject property. And I would just respectfully ask the board to revise the assessment to reflect the fair market value. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That would conclude number 13, 1039 Windermere Avenue. We will now move to number 14, which is 215 Lynbrook Drive. Madam Assessor, if you'd like to make your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So the subject property is 215 Lynbrook Drive. Roll number is 0100104150. This property is located in Varsity View. It is a cab over built in 2007. Living area is 2,192 square feet. This property has a full basement, which is finished, 2 full bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, 2 showers, air conditioning, a fireplace, and a multiple attached garage. The lot size of the subject property is 5,858 square feet. And it does have two land influences, commercial adjacent as well as internal corner. The current 2025 assessed value of the subject property is $756,000. Comparable number 1 is 127 Hofstede Drive, located in Ridgewood South. This property is also a cab over, built in 2020. Living area is 1,909 square feet, has a full basement, which is finished, 2 full bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, 1 shower, air conditioning, a fireplace, and a multiple attached garage. The assessed lot size for comparable number 1 is 5,492 square feet. And the sale occurred in August 2020 with a time adjusted sale price of $710,000. Comparable number 2 is 323 Haney Street. This property is located in the same area as the subject property, Varsity View. It is also a cab over, built in 2002. Living area of 1,767 square feet. This property has a full basement, which is finished, 2 full bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, 2 showers, air conditioning, 2 fireplaces, and a multiple attached garage. The lot size of comparable number 2 is 6,295 square feet. And this property does have a few land influences. It has hydro transformer box, light traffic, as well as park. This sale occurred in January of 2022, and the time adjusted sale price is $608,500. Comparable number 3, 299 Elmhurst Road, again located in the same neighborhood as the subject, Varsity View. This property is a 1-story, built in 2020. Living area is 2,024 square feet, has a full basement, which is not finished compared to the finished basement of the subject. This property has 2 full bathrooms, 1 half bathroom, 1 shower, air conditioning, and a multiple attached garage. The lot size of comparable number 3 is 7,209 square feet, and it does have a medium traffic influence. The sale occurred in April of 2020, and the time adjusted sale price is $692,900. Finally, comparable number 4, 567 Dieppe Road. This property is located in Iroquois, which is an adjacent neighborhood. It is a 2-story home built in 2022, 2,156 square feet. It is a full basement, which is not finished, 3 full bathrooms, no half bathrooms, 1 shower, air conditioning, and a multiple attached garage. The lot size of comparable number 4 is 6,776 square feet. Land influences for this property are external corner, 4-way stop, and school. This property sold in August of 2022 for with a time adjusted sale price of $689,300. So this property, unfortunately, there are not a lot of cab over homes that have sold, especially not in Varsity View. So I did have to go outside of that area to find other sales of newer homes that have sold. And I do think that this is, these comparables are a good representation of what the value of the subject property would be. After reviewing the sales, I do feel that the value of the property is on the high side, and so I am recommending a reduction to $735,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, do you have any questions?
Well, I appreciate that the assessor is willing to make a recommendation as to a revised value for the subject property. I do appreciate that. Unfortunately, I'm not able to accept the recommendation as I'm not able to speak to my client and receive concurrence. So unfortunately, I will have to reject the recommendation and proceed with my disclosure. However, I do have a few questions for the assessor. So, Ms. Nichols, I think you and I likely ran into some of the similar problems valuing this property. It's like a mid-2000s infill type property. And it's kind of in a unique location. Charleswood, of course, very vast and widespread neighborhood. So just in looking at some of these comparable sales and recognizing that it's a unique property, were you able to find any comparable sales that shared a commercial influence like the subject property at all?
Unfortunately, I don't remember seeing any sales that had the commercial influence.
And then just regarding comparables 1 and 3, so I'm looking at the sale price from 2020 and August 2020, both August 2020. So what considerations, is it a formula that the city uses in making that time adjustment? Because it's like quite substantial, like $100,000 difference, and then a $90,000 difference. So how does that time adjustment quantified?
So the time adjustment is model derived. So basically, a computer model analyzes sales throughout time and makes adjustments based on what it finds has happened in the market during that time.
Okay. And just the previous disclosures that we've gone through, the sales you've looked at occurred between April 1st, 2021 and April 1st, 2023. So just wondering why you opted to go with sales from 2020.
So we generally, I do prefer sales, of course, that are closer to the reference date. In this case, just because, this is, as you mentioned, a pretty unique property. Not only is it an infill property in Charleswood, but it is also a cab over, which is a pretty unusual style of property to begin with. And there just weren't that many sales. So unfortunately, I felt that I wanted to represent the cab over, like comparable number 1 is a cab over, and an infill and closer in square footage, although still smaller than the subject. So I just felt that was important to represent.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions?
I have no questions at this time.
Ms. Del Oro, any questions?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions at this time, so I will turn it over to the applicant to make his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So beginning on page 1 of my disclosure, the property we're discussing today is 215 Lynbrook Drive, file number 24-893, with an assessed value of $756. Moving on to page 3 of the disclosure, the subject property is a 2,192 square foot single family dwelling built in 2007. M&P has analyzed comparable sales, and we have determined that the correct and fair market value of the property is $607,000. On page 4 of the disclosure, we have the same information provided by the assessor, just providing a description of the property, year built, air conditioning, garage type, etc. Moving on to page 5, we have the breakdown of how M&P has determined the market value for the subject property. We have analyzed comparable sales, and we've determined that an appropriate market rate for the property is about $276 a square foot. Moving on to page 6, we have the assessment map and an aerial overview of the property. So if we look at the second photo on page 6, we see that the property is located on an internal corner, so it shares a back lane with the commercial strip on Roblin Boulevard, and is a stone's throw from Roblin Boulevard itself and all the commercial properties right on Roblin Boulevard there. So not the ideal Charleswood location. On page 7, we have exterior photographs of the property. Seeing it is directly on that back lane, that commercial back lane. And on page 8, We do have a number of sales of properties that are similar to the subject. And it's from these sales we derived the market value for the subject. So again, with this property being something of an outlier in Charleswood, land values are high enough in Charleswood that we don't see a lot of infill developments. We don't see a lot of new homes being built within Old Charleswood. So the comparable sales that I'm looking at are all newer properties in the newer part of Charleswood. Is really the only way to get an idea as to what a newer property is selling for in that Charleswood area. And again, these comparable sales summarized on page 8, none of them share the negative commercial influence. None of them are a stone's throw from Roblin Boulevard. None of them are right next door to commercial land uses. So while these properties are similar in terms of their square footage and their age, they are all somewhat superior to the subject property in terms of their location. So we have Joyson Crescent, Camira Way, McCrindle Bay, Spilett Cove, Creemans Crescent, Dedrick Bay, all part of a newer development within Charleswood. And then we can see that the sale price on per square foot ranges from about $230 a square foot to about $308 per square foot. And on subsequent pages 9 and page 10, I have attempted to provide as many photographs of the comparable properties as I could. Given that a lot of these properties are newer, we weren't able to find photos of them. But I have, for the board's convenience, tried to include as many photos as I could as to the newer properties. You can see it quite similar to the subject in terms of detached garage, stucco, kind of your typical newer home. Nothing particularly special about them. Just a standard attached garage, newer home. And then on page 11, I have included that comparable sales map. Again, noting that these properties are in a new development within Charleswood, whereas the subject property is in one of the older, more established parts of Charleswood. So after analyzing the market evidence and looking at these comparable sales, the properties that sold between 2021 and 2023, M&P is confident that an appropriate price per square foot for the subject property is about $276. When we apply that metric to the square footage of the property, we arrive at our requested value of $607,000. And respectfully, we would request that the board revise the assessment to reflect the fair market value of the subject property. And with that, I would welcome any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Assessor, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So I guess at the risk of sounding like a broken record, would you agree that you have not applied any time adjustments to any of the sale prices you provided here?
That's correct. I mean, for looking at comparables, 69 McCrindle Bay, 157 McCrindle Bay, 3 Spilett Cove, I don't think that anyone would apply an adjustment, seeing as how close that is to April 1st, 2023. And then correct, for the other ones, I did not apply a time adjustment.
Thank you. And so just wanted to just be clear. So the subject property, would you agree the subject property has a finished basement?
My understanding is that the subject property does have a finished basement, yes.
Okay, thank you. And finished basement, having a finished basement, especially in a new home, you would agree would add value to the property?
Depending on the quality of finish, I would agree that a basement finish is something that home buyers would look for, yes.
Okay. And where you aware that none of the properties you've provided today have finished basements?
My understanding is that most of the properties in that new development new development in Charleswood would be sold without a finished basement. It would depend on the package that the developer has and offered. But my understanding is that those properties do not have finished basements, yes.
Okay. So none of the properties have finished basements. Okay, thank you. And then I also was looking at 27 Creemans Crescent on MLS, and I noticed a note that said the sellers are motivated. They've already moved out of the province. Do you think that's something, having motivated sellers, do you think that's something that could have impacted the value of that property, the selling price?
It's possible that it is the lowest of the sale prices on a square footage basis. However, it did sell for $600,000 at the peak of the market, larger than the other ones. I'm not really gonna speculate as to what happened with that sale. Only the buyer and the seller know for certain what considerations were made when that property was purchased.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. And just the last question that I had was regarding the location. So I'm looking at your map on page 11. And so I'm wondering if you've made any adjustments for location here, because all of your comparables are located in what I believe is Ridgewood South, and the subject is in Varsity View.
Yeah, so looking at that, despite it's a bit of a difference, right? So you get farther away from the city, farther away from the city center, newer home, but then you don't have the commercial adjacent, the negative influences that this property has. So my justification for looking at these newer homes, and you also included some newer homes from this area in your disclosure, I think it's the best way we can look at the subject property, because these are newer homes and we don't have many sales of newer homes within Charleswood. So looking at the properties and acknowledging that they are a little bit farther away from the city center and in a bit of a different part of Charleswood than the subject, I think considering all the locational factors, they still provide a good baseline for what homes are selling for, at least newer homes in the Charleswood area.
So you did not adjust for the location, then, is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
I looked at them as newer sales. I'm not sure if what you're looking for in terms of adjustments made.
Well, I'm just wondering, because you did the Kingsway influence previously on a different property. I was just wondering if you had done a similar analysis and adjustment for location here, considering how different the location is from the subject.
So like in terms of the commercial adjacent nature of the subject property, I wasn't able to find sufficient sales that shared that Roblin commercial adjacent influence in order to quantify the impact on market value. That's correct. I wasn't able to find sufficient market data to quantify the commercial influence to a dollar tune.
Okay, and then just last question. Was there a particular reason that you didn't include any sales that were closer to the subject property? Because there were, I mean, you're right, there weren't that many, but there were some. Is there a reason that you didn't include those sales?
I'm looking at, or like you mean 323 Haney? That's the only one that I think you included.
So I had 3 sales, 2 of which were in the same neighborhood as the subject, and one that was in Iroquois, which is a different area, but closer than Ridgewood South. Just curious why you didn't include sales that were closer. Like, why were all the sales that far away?
Because those were the newer construction. They were the best reflection of what the market value is for the subject property.
Okay, that was all the questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kraus, do you have any questions?
No, I think just kind of, just following up the assessor's questions, because you're doing 2-story sales in the neighborhood that you pulled, there were no 2-story sales in the Varsity View area that you could use, or that you found that you thought were comparable?
Yeah, so in my analysis of the market, I wasn't able to find like newer home sales. The subject property built in 2007. I wasn't able to find properties with similar square footage, similar year built, and similar characteristics. Like there are those two that the assessor pointed to that are somewhat newer and somewhat closer to the subject property. But then those properties don't have the same negative influence of being, just off of Roblin and sharing a back lane with commercial properties. So I felt that in trying to balance those two things, newer property, but worse location, I had to balance those. And that's why ultimately I decided to go with the newer properties, just trying to balance those two negative, well, the one locational difference, just trying to balance those two and reconcile the two.
Thank you.
Ms. Del Oro, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Would you consider being in close proximity to Assiniboine Park to be a negative, or did you consider that?
Certainly, I think the closer you are to Assiniboine Park, that is a positive. Is it enough of a positive to outweigh trucks driving past in the middle of the night? Personally, I don't think it's enough of a positive to outweigh the commercial adjacency and having to deal with that 24/7. But of course, being closer to Assiniboine Park is a positive. But for this property, I don't feel that it's enough of a positive to outweigh the negative, the noise, the traffic fumes, the business is operating right next door. I don't feel that it's enough of a positive to negate those negative influences.
Okay, and you haven't given us the lot sizes. Are they all similar? Because newer areas generally may have a smaller lot size to the subject property.
So they,
Perhaps?
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, they might be slightly smaller. So subject property, almost 54.5 for the frontage, total lot size, 5,858. If I just pick a couple of these at random, so let's say, let's look at, Creeman, and we can see what it is. Like my understanding that they were usually roughly about 5,000 square feet, the lot sizes. Looking at this one, it's 5,518 square feet. So roughly the same lot size as the subject property. If we want to look at another one, could look at the first one here, 7 Joinson. 5,622 square feet. So yeah, that if my memory is serving me right, the comparable sales are all in the 5,000 to 6,000 square feet range.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you.
And I am wondering, I see that the subject home was built in 2007. And a lot of the homes that you have indicated here were built between the comparisons between 2018 and 2022. Do you consider 2007 to be a newer home?
Not exactly. For Charleswood, I would consider it to be a newer home. Just because Charleswood is an established neighborhood and home values are high enough in that area that we don't see a lot of infill. So for Charleswood, I would consider it to be somewhat newer, just given the characteristics of the neighborhood and the neighborhood character itself.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering if I could redirect a question to the assessor as well. And that is about your recommendation. You said that you would now recommend 735,000 because you felt that the original assessment was too high. Can you tell me what your rationale is for that, please?
Well, I'm just looking at the comparable properties that I was able to find. So looking at, my comparable number 1 is in Ridgewood South, which is the same area as Mr. Horsburgh has provided comparables from. The rest of my comparables are closer to the subject's neighborhood. So comparables 2 and 3 are in Varsity View, Although they are smaller, especially comparable number 2 is smaller than the subject property. Comparable number 3 is closer in size. And I'm looking at the sale prices of those properties, and same with comparable number 4. That's a closer area to the subject property than Ridgewood South. And so I'm just looking at the sale prices there of those properties, and I'm seeing that, you know, 756 is higher than any of those values. So although the subject property is larger, it is still high enough that I feel that it's higher than is supported by these comparables. So that's the reason for the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering if you have a summary that you would like to make.
I do. Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned, the comparables that I brought today, except for comparable number 1, are all pretty close to the subject property. Comparables 2 and 3 are in the same neighborhood. Comparable number 2 specifically is a cab over, where the subject property is also a cab over, so it's the same type of building as well. Built in 2002, where the subject is built in 2007, so that's the closest as well in terms of year built. It is the smallest of the comparables though, so when I'm looking at, you know, my comparable properties, I'm seeing that, yes, the subject property does have a couple of negative influences. Comparables 2, 3, and 4 also have some negative influences. And so I think, you know, in terms of balancing out the value, I think, you know, balancing out some of those negative influences with the value, I think these are pretty reflective of what the assessed value of the subject property should be. So again, in looking at especially the values of comparables 2, 3, and 4, and, you know, giving some minimal consideration to comparable 1, I do think that the value of the subject property should come down to $735,000. I think that would be supported and fair for the subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, do you have a summary you would like to make?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'll just make a brief summary. So again, as per the Municipal Assessment Act, the onus is on the assessor to prove that the value is right. And while I appreciate that the assessor has admitted that 756,000 isn't right and can't be justified for the subject property, in looking at her comparables and my comparables, it certainly seems that this is a difficult property to value. But the Assessment and Taxation Department and the assessor, they haven't been able to satisfy that requirement in defending the assessment. And I would hope that the board would therefore side with the taxpayer in this case and consider the valuation conducted by MNP and the market value as determined by MNP. And I would respectfully ask that the board side with the taxpayer and revise the assessment to the value that I provided that is defensible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And that concludes item 14, so we can move on to item 15, which is 901 Lajmodier. Madam Assessor, if you would like to make your presentation.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to pull it up here. So the subject property has roll number 0605021150. Address is 901 Lajmodier Boulevard. This property is a 1-story built in 1962, living area of 1,401 square feet, full basement, which is finished, 1 full bathroom, 1 half bathroom, 1 shower, no air conditioning, and a multiple detached garage. The lot size on this property is 43,322 square feet. Land influences are bus route, commercial adjacent, heavy traffic, and rail line. So the current 2025 assessed value of this property is $458,000. The comparables that I brought today are unfortunately not in the subject area, so this is a pretty unique property. It's located in an industrial park. The comparables that I'm looking at today are across from Lajmodier on just on the other side of it. These properties are, have kind of a range of year built, range of building types, but we're as close as possible to kind of that busy Lajmodier that I could find. So, kind of reflect what's happening there in the market. But the subject sales basically are ranging from $237,900 in terms of the time adjusted sale price up to $287,000. And I am recommending a reduction on this property to $350,000. I do think that considering the size of the living area, the size of the lot, as well as the location, $350,000 would be a more reasonable value for this property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Applicant, any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Nichols. I do have client concurrence. The client has instructed me to accept the recommendation of $350,000, and I thank the assessor for her cooperation. Again, with a unique file, I do appreciate that she was willing to make that change. And on behalf of my client, thank you, Ms. Nichols. I do appreciate that, and we are more than happy to accept that. My analysis of the property, I found that $350,000 was the fair market value. So I won't go through my disclosure unless the board wants me to. That was the value that I considered to be the fair market value, and I'm happy to accept that recommendation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions?
No question.
Ms. Del Oro, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
We have heard all the items scheduled and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Thank you, panel members, and thank you, Ms. Nichols.
Thank you.